Good morning, BookTube Prize 2023. It's happening. Okay, so it seems like forever since I've made a BookTube Prize vlog, and that is because it has been a really long time because I didn't read in round one. And I'm also going to be making my my predictions. Did I predict well video results, which you probably will already have seen by the time this video goes live. So that's been really fun, actually. So I think I might continue to do that. I don't know. I might do that for this round, even though I'm judging it, and see how it goes. Okay, so today I'm just setting the groundwork for you on how I'm gonna try to read over the next 2 months with the BookTube Prize. I'm in nonfiction group D, and I was very grateful actually to get that group because I thought that most of the books in that group were books that I was interested in. I was so happy to not get G-Man. I was so worried I was going to get G-Man, and I really don't want to read that book. So I'm really hoping it gets knocked out this round, so I don't have to read it in a future round. So when I went into my library to see what the availability was like for the books that I have in my group, I saw that An Immense World was actually super popular at my library. So all of the books, the audio, the ebook, and the hard copy book all have multiple holds, multiple people waiting. And so I put myself on the list for the hold that had the least amount of people waiting. So I put it on, I think, for the hard copy book, and I think I'm number 6, and there's 11 copies of the book. So I will most likely get An Immense World, get my hands on The Immense World. Hopefully the beginning of May would be awesome, but I really don't know. But as soon as it comes up, I will go get it, because it's obviously very popular and there will probably be more people putting it on hold after me. And so, yeah, I will have to be really quick with it. On audio, I've decided to read We Don't Know Ourselves by Fintan O'Toole. This is the longest book in my group, over 600 pages, 22-hour audiobook. Memoir combined with social commentary is really good for me to read, to listen to. Whenever you've got names, dates, political stuff, conversation, I tend to do better with that listening because I find that if there's a lot of names, dates, I get bogged down with those details when I'm physically reading it, and I feel like it's something I'm supposed to retain, and it makes me read slower. So if I re-listen to it on audio, it goes at its own pace. I will probably increase the speed of the audiobook as well, so I'll probably listen to it at 2 1/4 speed, just because when you're talking about 22 hours, that's a really long time. And I think you get the audiobooks here, I get it for about 21 days. So I'll have to speed it up a bit to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. And then from the library, I have taken out 3 of the books on the list. So I have Dinners with Ruth. All 3 of these were available and had no holds. Dinners with Ruth by Nina Totenburg. His Name is George Floyd by Robert Samuels and Toluse Olorunnipa. And Paradise Falls by Keith O'Brien. I was actually really excited to see that Keith O'Brien wrote Fly Girls, and I listened to Fly Girls 2 or 3 years ago, and I really enjoyed that book. So I already kind of have a sense of his writing style, so I think I'll enjoy this. Hopefully it's as good as Fly Girls was. His Name is George Floyd, I'm sure is going to be a very intense book, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be really informative and important to read. And then out of my group, I would say Dinners with Ruth is the one that I am the least interested in reading. This has nothing to say against Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I have no problem with her at all. It's more that I'm just like in terms of a topic, in terms of I'm just not very interested in reading books often that are about very popular American political figures. It's just not something like, for instance, I've never read Becoming by Michelle Obama. I've never read, I don't have anything against Michelle Obama. Obviously, she's an incredible woman. And again, nothing against RBG. It's just that like this isn't my area of interest. So I'm going to start with this one because I feel like it's the one I'm the least interested in, and I'll get it, and it's the shortest. So I'll get it read and I'll get it under my belt and I'll feel good for having gotten through a book. And then we're going to go from there. So my plan for April is to get through 4 books and then to have 2 left for May, An Immense World and How to Something a Dictator is the other one, which is also very popular at my library. So whatever version of the book is the easiest to get, I will read that one in May. Yeah, so that is my plan for April for nonfiction group D. Very excited to be back reading, a little nervous because, as I said, my reading in 2023 has been not typical of the way I usually read. I've carried a lot of books across months. I've struggled getting through some books. I just haven't had a very focused discipline around reading, and I've just kind of let myself float in that area and not worry too much about that. But when you're doing something like reading for the BookTube Prize, you have to read with a schedule because you've got to get through these books. So, and they're long. That's the other thing. Like they're all over 400 pages, except for this one. So I'm gonna start with it. And I will check in again with you when I have gotten halfway through Dinners with Ruth. Good morning, everybody. So I am halfway through Dinners with Ruth by Nina Totenburg. And the first thing I want to say is that I misjudged this book. And I'm glad that I did. Not glad that I misjudged it, but I'm glad that it's proving to be a good read for me. So this book is actually about friendship. And I know that is the subtitle, A Memoir on the Power of Friendships. But I thought it was going to focus only on Nina Totenburg and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it does to some degree. They're kind of the main focuses. But really, this is about all of Nina Totenburg's friendships and her observations on friendships. And she divides up the chapters into kind of vignettes that support different aspects of friendship. So I really like that. I like the way it's written. I like the way she writes very well. Obviously, she's a journalist, so she knows how to write, but she has, a very conversational way of speaking, but it's also very poignant. It's not overly sentimental. So there's like that kind of factual remove that a journalist has, but she's also talking about herself. So she's being very honest and genuine in what she's sharing. And I'm finding it very relatable, and I really enjoy the fact that she's focusing on a lot of her female colleagues and the friendships they developed in a really important time in women who work. Nina did not have children. She married twice, but she didn't have children, so she's not a mom, but she is a working woman in a world where men were dominant very strongly. So coming of age in the 1960s and 1970s, dealing with a lot of discrimination in a very male-dominated world of journalism in Washington, D.C. And she's also relaying Ruth's experiences as a female judge, only the second female judge nominated to the Supreme Court. So there's a lot in here about women's history, feminist history, these women who were, you know, on the front lines essentially of opening up doors for women, but also kind of their support of each other through personal tragedies and challenges. I didn't really know. I knew that this had a feel of celebrity to it, which was what was making me not want to read it. Obviously, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I was aware of who she was. I wasn't really aware of Nina Totenburg, the fact that she broke the Anita Hill story, these things that I didn't really know because I'm not really closely following American journalism and politics. So, but reading about that experience of when she broke that story and how it came about was really interesting. And so I'm enjoying this. It's very readable. It's not too dense. It's not too weighed down, even though there's like serious emotional things happening in here. Nina Totenberg's way of relaying that information I find is very it flows really well. There's not a lot of things that make me feel like I have to stop reading the book. So yeah, I'm reading it really quickly. I'm hoping to finish this one this weekend because I need to get moving on some of my others. And I will check in again either when I finish this one or when I'm halfway through the next one. Good morning, everyone. I finished Dinners with Ruth, a memoir on the power of friendships by Nina Totenberg, and I really enjoyed this. I really didn't expect to, and I really did. I think this book is very successful in what it sets out to do, which is focus on friendships, focus specifically on Nina's friendships and her recollections of the people that made differences in her lives, especially Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It was sweet without being too sentimental. It was emotionally, I connected emotionally with a lot of the scenarios she talks about. I thought she wrote very poignantly with a lot of, with just enough subjectivity to make it relatable to others, but also still being very personal about her own life. So to me, a memoir like this is exactly what memoirs should be. Not too navel-gazing, but bringing you into someone's life, sharing the poignant things that they are wanting to memorialize, and having you care about those things. And if you would have told me that I would have cared about reading about Supreme Court justice and the way that they work, I probably would have said, no, I don't. That's why I was kind of like, oh, I don't think I'm going to like this book. But I did. She wrote about it in a very relatable way. And it was about the people. It was about the people. So she focused on the people and the friendships. And I thought she did a great job in putting that all together. So I have finished Dinners with Ruth. And I am going on now to, I'm still listening to We Don't Know Ourselves by Fintan O'Toole. I'm just getting to halfway, so I'll probably check in a few, whenever I get to halfway with that. And so this vlog, I think, will have Dinners with Ruth and We Don't Know Ourselves. And then I will, I've also just started Paradise Falls, so I will probably create a new vlog with Paradise Falls and whichever one I continue next. But An Immense World just came available. My hold on Immense World just came up, so I'm going to pick that up from the library tomorrow after work, and then I will be have in my possession 3 books that I will try to keep going. But I'm glad I finished one, and onward and upwards. I'll check in again when I'm halfway through We Don't Know Ourselves. everybody. I'm halfway through We Don't Know Ourselves by Fintan O'Toole, so I thought I'd check in with you about it. So I'm listening to this on audio, which is a pretty good experience. I would say that the narrator is doing a good job of being animated enough to keep things interesting. And the format of this book is really interesting. I don't think I've ever listened to or read something so comprehensive in its scope while also being a memoir. I like the format overall. I think that learning about Fintan's life and relating that to these different years. So it basically starts in 1958 when Fintan's born, and he kind of chronologically goes through each year and picks out some different things that are significant to him and significant to Ireland and significant to the progress of Ireland as a place, because ultimately he tries to really drive home how delayed Ireland was in stepping into kind of Western culture, and there were many factors that led to that. One of the main ones being the Catholic Church and its domination of Catholic people, and how these different outside influence, JFK visiting in the 60s, how that influenced the culture, and then Pope John Paul II visiting and how that influenced the culture. So there's lots of different aspects there that he's going over. He's covering music, architecture, agriculture, politics, economic policy, social norms, birth control, like just a lot. So it's got a lot in there. So yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying listening to it. I wouldn't say that it's, for me, there could probably be a little bit more personal reflection. I enjoy when he includes some personal reflections in there, and I don't think he does that a ton. So he really does. I mean, you can tell that he researched this book really, really well. And then he does take some liberties, I think, with his opinions, which are interesting as well. And he kind of, goes there on some opinions, which I think there's a little bit of sarcasm there. There's a little bit of eye rolling, I would say, with his the way he relays the story to you, maybe his own frustration with the history and the lack of kind of drive that a lot of Irish politicians and the people who were leading Irish society just didn't seem to have a big enough vision for him, and I think that frustrates him, and I feel like that comes across a bit in the text. So yeah, those are my thoughts of We Don't Know Ourselves halfway through. It's certainly giving me a really interesting perspective, knowing that when my family immigrated away from Ireland, which would have been not way earlier than this period, because there was a lot of immigrants leaving Ireland in the 20th century as well, which I didn't really know much about. And so he's relaying why, and a lot of it was because of this lack of progress and lack of modernity that people were craving at that time. So yeah, I will check in again with you when I have finished the book. Good morning. So I finished We Don't Know Ourselves by Fintan O'Toole, and overall I thought it was a really interesting read. I think when you're just talking about a memoir combined with a social, political, economic history of a place, there's bound to be things that feel left out to some people in their references to that place. And so for me, I thought that he picked some kind of, not obscure references, but he didn't refer to things that I thought were pertinent. So for instance, he talked about river dance, the phenomena, the social cultural phenomena of river dance, which had this very specific viewpoint on Irish history, and that became, a worldwide sensation. But he didn't speak about Sinead O'Connor or U2, who were arguably two of the biggest music stars to come out of Ireland in the 1980s and 90s, and definitely influenced the culture, especially Sinead O'Connor, because she went on to, Saturday Night Live and tore a picture of the Pope. And I feel like she was, doing direct action related to the sexual abuse that was going on in the church. And he referred to that so much in this book. He talked about it quite extensively, but from the church's corruption point, and not from like the outward kind of social reaction to all of this abuse coming to light point of view. And I feel like that was a missed opportunity. He didn't need to go into extreme detail on it, but he should have mentioned it. I mean, it was very important at the time, and very especially for people in North America, like it was huge news, and she had so much backlash against her in Ireland because of it. So I just found it interesting that he chose not to mention that at all. It's actually quite a hard book to read. There's a lot of abuse talked about, a lot of misogyny, a lot of corruption, and I think it kind of, it was starting to peter out near the end. I found that the book really was strong in the beginning and middle, and then near the end, it had a bit of a, okay, so wrapping it up feeling to it. And I know you have to do that to end a book, but it just didn't feel like there was, enough for me. Kind of like, where does Ireland go from here? I felt like the conclusion was kind of like, yeah, Ireland is unique, la-di-da, here we go. Like, I just didn't feel like, satisfied very much by the ending. So I think overall my impressions of it are that it's, a great exploration of being Irish, and it explores, the whole immigration aspect of the 20th century quite interestingly in Ireland. Considering my family immigrated in the 19th century, it's just interesting to understand the circumstances under which people in the 20th century felt they had to leave. But yeah, in terms of an amazing nonfiction book that I think everyone should read, I don't think it doesn't reach that pinnacle to me. I don't think, unless you're interested specifically in Ireland, I don't know why you would read it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that book. And that's the end of this vlog, and I will be back again soon with my next vlog for the next two books in my section.